Let's get to chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia. He now has a ticket. We're on the same bandwagon. We're really mad at Governor McAuliffe about the comments he made after the Alexandria shooting. McAuliffe now in Europe on a trade mission. I thought that was one of the most insensitive, just myopic things I've ever heard. I was shocked by it. I guess John isn't. John Whitbeck, chairman, Republican Party of Virginia. Good to have you with us, John.
Morning, John. How are you?
All right. Now, let's go with your ticket. This is the first week. They start campaigning. Ed Gillespie, Jill Vogel, John Adams. What do you think?
You know, this is probably the first time that the Republican Party of Virginia has got a ticket, after such a hard-fought, typical Virginia Republican primary. I mean, we always have these spirited, high stress, high drama primaries. It's just who we are, and we always arrive, past the primary with unity and with everything we need to do to win. And this ticket, has gone through the ringer. I mean, you've got John Adams running against an incumbent. It was a tough race who just came out swinging at their debate this weekend. And John sort of got, a wake-up call, if you will, that they're scared of him over there. I mean, the aggression with which Mark Herring went after him was just staggering. And then Jill Vogel runs against two class acts, Bryce Reeves, Glenn Davis. Hard, close primary, something she'd really campaign hard, spend money. And then, of course, Ed Gillespie, gets surprised with a much closer primary than he had. It makes you sort of appreciate the fact that you actually ran a campaign with the grassroots. You didn't take it for granted. And this really gets them ready to go, which is going to be our toughest challenge yet as a party, and that is our November election against the Democrats.
All right, John, there were two tough battles. Obviously, Adams was unopposed, but let's get to the Reeves-Vogel battle for lieutenant governor, where there was lawsuits going back and forth. Well, not going back and forth, from Reeves to Vogel potentially, and we had that whole email thing going on, and then Senator Reeves sent out a mailer that kind of shocked me, but obviously it worked, about the gay judge that Vogel voted for. How do they mend the fence now and campaign? How does Senator Reeves get past this and campaign for Senator Vogel?
Well, one of the things that candidates need to remember is that negative campaigning is something that's going to happen. I mean, you're going to point out people's records. I mean, and I didn't agree with Bryce's decision to send out that mailer. I just think it was, we as a party and me as a chairman have to be absolutely neutral. But yeah, I would have joined with many of my colleagues in saying that was not a good idea. But, at the end of the day, you make a vote and people are going to point out your record, and that's fair game. Distortions and falsehoods are not fair game, but, pointing out someone's record. And, look, here's the deal. If you look at Bryce Reeves and you look at Jill Vogel and you look at Justin Fairfax, Bryce Reeves is more likely to be aligned with Jill Vogel than Justin Fairfax. So at the very least, you start out with the notion that you want to elect the more conservative candidate. But then you throw in the fact that Bryce Reeves is a class act, that Bryce Reeves has served with distinction in the state Senate. He's been a leader on the Second Amendment. He's got a wonderful family. His wife could not be more gracious and classy. So this is a gentleman who's going to do the right thing and has already done the right thing. And same with Glenn Davis. I mean, I just can't say enough great things about Glenn Davis, who just could not be more, gracious and classy, after this whole affair with the, primary. And just really excited to see what's going to happen with Jill's race. I think she enters that race as a front runner. I really do. I think she's one of the best candidates we've ever had running for office. I think she's got depth. She's got a record. She's got a wonderful family. I mean, she's the total package, and we're really excited to have her there.
Well, Glenn Davis is a class act. There's no question about it. We only hope that Senator Reeves can get beyond whatever he's doing and back the Vogel campaign. And I think you hit the nail on the head. At the end of the day, I think Senator Reeves does that. Obviously, he did very well. He has a following, and we'll see how that plays out. I also agree with you. I think Jill Vogel right now is going to lead the ticket. I think of the three she has right now, she's got the best chance to win of any of the three candidates, but we got a long way to go. John, let's get to the gubernatorial race. Ed Gillespie surviving there, a scare. Corey Stewart doing much better than anybody thought he would do. Now, let's qualify this. Corey Stewart got a free ride. He attacked Ed in ads, both social media, TV, and radio, and print unmercifully for 4 months. Ed didn't respond. The Gillespie campaign never went negative on Stewart. They never even responded to his attacks. So he had kind of open fire, no return fire. Ed also decided not to spend a lot of money at the end. He ended primary day with $2.5 million. He's going to get another million, I suspect, from the RGA, Republican Governors Association. So he's going to have the money to compete. Where does Stewart go now with his? Does Stewart back Ed? What happens? Have you talked with him?
Well, yeah, I have, and multiple news sources have reported that Corey's going to support the ticket. He said he's going to support the ticket. He told me he supports the ticket, and so we've already moved on from that. I mean, the Democrats would love nothing more than for us to dwell on a primary, and this happened in 2013 in terms of dwelling on the primary when the Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling refused to endorse or even say he would support Ken Cuccinelli. And, it just really trashed his legacy as a public servant and a good Republican. And it created a situation where it was tough to unify when you had, a major elected official doing that. So, Corey's not going to go that way. He's already said right out of the gate that he's going to support the ticket. And so we've moved on from that and we're ready to go with Ed Gillespie as our nominee. And, you talked a little bit about the calculated risk that Ed took. And look, I said from the beginning, I cautioned each of these candidates to follow the Ronald Reagan 11th commandment. Thou shalt not speak ill of another Republican. It's kind of a theme that's gone on. And then the 12th amendment I sort of made up was, thou shalt support the nominee of the Republican Party. And look, Ed decided to follow the 11th commandment and didn't attack Corey Stewart at all. He could have spent $500,000, $1 million, $2 million fighting right back and doing what Corey was doing to him, and he decided not to. And I guess the question is, where would you rather be? Would you rather have won a close primary and be the nominee and have $2 million in the bank, or have $100,000 in the bank and had blown out your primary opponent that everybody thought you would blow out anyway? I'd rather be where Ed Gillespie is right now, because at the end of the day, the Democrats always have more money than they can spend. They have these billionaires in Michael Bloomberg and George Soros that will write $500,000 checks at will. The DGA put $1 million into the campaign right out of the gate as soon as Ralph Northam got the nomination. So I tell you, I'd rather be where Ed Gillespie's at right now than if it had gone a different way. And look, I mean, I think Virginia public polling is garbage. I think we should disregard it. If it shows us tied or up or down, throw it out of your mind. It's never accurate. It never gets it right. They try to do this every year. They tried to do it to us last year with Donald Trump, and they said he was going to lose by 40 points or some ridiculous number. And we get demoralized over it. And I got to go around the state and go, don't worry about the polls. They're never accurate. Well, again, they're just not accurate. I mean, Corey was shown way down. It wasn't accurate. Now this latest poll where it shows Gillespie and Northam tied. Hey, I hope that's true. That'd be great if it were true. I don't really care what the poll says. The only poll that matters is in November, and we got to get out there and win for Ed Gillespie.
I agree with you 100%, both on the ridiculous nature of the polling in Virginia and the shape that Ed Gillespie is in right now, because when he made the decision not to go negative on Stewart, here's the deal. He's not alienated any voters anywhere. So if you voted for Frank Wagner, you got no problem with Ed. Ed didn't alienate anybody. If you voted for Corey Stewart, you shouldn't have a problem with Ed. Ed never said one negative word in this campaign about either of these candidates. And, Wagner got 13%. I think Corey got 41% or something like that, 40-something. So he never said a negative word. So he's alienated none of the voters. I think he's got an opportunity to get everybody back in the fold.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think I went to a couple of debates. I mean, there was this whole thing about Ed Gillespie hiding from debates. I think Ed did something like 12 different forums and debates. I mean, it was ridiculous how many. We just do not need that many candidate forums and debates. And, you know, and he went to a ton of them. And I think one time he threw back at Corey that, you know, he'd been fired by the Trump campaign and that, you know, when the White House calls, you know, or when I call the White House, they'll actually answer my calls. And look, I mean, the guy was fired by the Trump campaign.
Well, that's really true. I mean, that's true.
You know, Ed did made one comment one time about Corey Stewart, and that's literally the only negative thing that I heard. No radio, no TV, no, not even digital ads, which are really cheap. I mean, it was just a positive campaign, and you know, something that Ed should be really proud of, that he could still win that race, you know, with the kind of campaign he ran. He should be something he should be proud of. And I'll tell you what, it's not going to be like that in the fall. Mm-hmm. We are going to be pointing out Ralph Northam's record of excessive taxation. He is an extremist, period, end of story. That's what he is. Call it what it is. He is not the Ralph Northam he claimed he was years ago, you know, being this sort of moderate, you know, sensible, I voted for George W. Bush. No, he is a full-fledged, dyed-in-the-wool extremist progressive and way outside the mainstream of Virginia.
All right, I got a couple more minutes. John Whitbeck, chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia, with us here on the John Fredericks Radio Network, where Virginia comes to talk. John, both of us criticized Terry McAuliffe last week for what I called grossly insensitive, myopic statement, politicizing the shooting in Alexandria while people are bleeding to death. He's talking about economic advancement and gun control in Virginia. I wrote him an open letter. I put it all over social media, basically saying, you know what? We get you're trying to brandish your left-wing progressive street cred with the Iowa caucus goers and running for president. But my heavens, John, there's a time and a place for everything. I thought that was McAuliffe's darkest moment. How about you?
Well, there's been a lot of dark moments, but it probably might have been, a person with character, waits and tries to see who's okay and who's been hurt, and and that's really what he ought to have done. I mean, my first thought when I heard about this was, was any congressional staffers or anybody harmed, or was any of our delegation practicing? It was Tom Garrett there, or Scott Taylor, Barbara Comstock, what was going on? And then I have a good friend who's also an elected official up here in Northern Virginia, who happens to be a Capitol Police officer, who at least in the past has worked on the detail for Congressman Scalise. I was texting him, calling him, going, are you all right? Of course, he was fine. Thank the Lord. But that's really what we ought to be. And this is a national tragedy that the Americans united around it. And I didn't see any Democrat. I mean, even the Virginia Democrats who are not necessarily our friends, they canceled all their events. They had wonderful things to say, which they always do. I mean, the Virginia Democratic Party and us, we get along fine, outside of this, because we're all Americans. And when our majority whip gets shot by a madman who's targeting him specifically because he's a Republican, for the governor to come out and try to use that as a means of furthering his radical, extreme, anti-Second Amendment agenda was appalling. It was embarrassing. Virginia, it was a dark day for Virginia. And when you have no record, he's accomplished nothing as governor, and he just made his last major act, really, that he'll have before November, something that makes Virginia look awful. And he should apologize. I didn't say anything about it at the time. On that day when the shooting had happened on the Wednesday, we were quiet, no tweets, no Facebook. We canceled all of our fly around events. It was not a time for me to say something about the governor, no matter how shameful he acted. But the next day, that was the one thing, besides finding out how Congressman Scalise was doing, was making sure that the people of Virginia knew that we will not stand for that kind of politics. And I can't wait for this governor to be done. Win or lose in November, the sad tragedy of the last 4 years with him at the helm will be over, thank goodness.
All right. I want to thank Republican Party of Virginia Chairman John Whitbeck for being with us. John, always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much. And by the way, John, happy Father's Day.